Welcome. My name is Diana Waring, and I'm glad you're here. Have you ever had this happen? You ask your spouse to pick up 3 things from the store, and he comes home with only 1 of what you asked for and 5 things you don't need? Why is that? Or maybe you need to figure out something new, and you realize that what you really need is a book with diagrams showing you step by step what to do. Why is it easier for you to learn from a book than from hearing someone explain it? On the other hand, maybe you found it easier to memorize math facts by going up and down stairs 1 at a time while you practiced 8 times 8 equals 64. Why do you need stairs when others can memorize by simply looking at the book? All of these have to do with the way each of us is wired to most easily take in new information. The term often used for this is learning modalities, and it includes visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. When we understand how this works, it becomes a powerful tool. It gives us freedom to use different approaches for our kids who are struggling. Let me give you an example. When my oldest was about 6 or 7, I would say, "Honey, I want you to go in and make your bed, pick up your clothes, and put away your toys." He was a happy, compliant child, so I always said, "Okay, Mommy." And after a while, he'd come out and cheerfully announce, "I'm done." But when I would go into his room, the only thing he'd done was make the bed. The rest of the room was a disaster. So what was going on here? What was his problem? Was he not paying attention? Was he lazy? Was he rebellious? I hadn't seen those kinds of issues with him, but I didn't know what else to think. About that time, my husband, who was a teacher, came back from a training session where they talked about how some people were visual learners, others were auditory learners, and still others were kinesthetic learners. As we looked together through the material, I suddenly wondered, could our son be a visual learner? And I keep talking at him, telling him what to do through his ears instead of his eyes. That was a new thought. So I tried an experiment. The next morning, instead of the normal drill, I said, "Honey, today I want you to clean your room. And look, I've got a list for you." On the list, I had a picture of a bed with a place to make a check mark. I had clothes in a drawer with a check mark and toys in a toy box with a check mark. He seemed excited at this and said, "Okay, Mommy." After a while, he came out and said, "All done." Same words he had always said. But this time, when I walked into his room, it really was all done. Everything on the list. You know, it felt a bit like magic, like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. But the reality is that he was indeed a visual learner. It was easier for him to see it instead of hearing me say it. That's what it's like to be a visual learner. When it comes to learning something new, it's easiest for these folks to get it by seeing it in a book or in a chart or in a diagram, any way that allows them to use their eyes to take in the information. For an auditory learner, it's easiest to learn something new by hearing it rather than seeing it. That's just the opposite, isn't it? Which could explain some things, right? Though a book might help, information really comes to life. You can hear with your ears someone explaining how it works. If you're a visual learner yourself and you have a child who keeps asking you to explain how photosynthesis works, it might get a little frustrating. You want to say, "Go look it up." But if that's not working for them, you taking the time to read it from a book might be just what they need. Then there's the kinesthetic learner. These are the folks who need to touch things or move while they're learning new information. You can just imagine how well that plays out in a classroom, right? They are just as smart as visual and auditory learners, but if you don't know that they need to move in order to learn, you might find yourself constantly saying, "Stop fidgeting, stop moving around." And then they pretty much stop learning. So instead, let them stand up while they do their math or draw while you read out loud to the family. An exercise ball to sit on or a koosh ball to fiddle with comes in very handy for these kinds of learners because it gives them a chance to move or touch while they're learning. Though each of us can eventually learn how to use any of these modalities, if your child is struggling right now, I encourage you to try a different approach. Remember, stay relational.